And I do now have Dr. Gewolb on the phone.
Good morning. Happy New Year to you and your listeners.
Now, tell me, the campaign for fair finance sounds great, and it's to do, I suppose, with how we borrow money.
It's to do with everything to do with finance, from banking to commercial finance to consumer finance. And it came out of the credit crunch, the financial crisis of a few years ago, where we became very dissatisfied with the way banks and lenders were treating their customers, the failure of the regulators. So what we do is work to stop the different stakeholders flagging themselves off in the newspaper and rather get them together and build a consensus. So I work with Archbishop Welby, who's done so much to put a cap on the activities of payday lenders, and at the same time, we sit down with the payday lenders themselves.
It must be an interesting combination or variation.
Sometimes the stakeholder meetings start out very strange because the people are opposed to things that the other one actually doesn't even believe in.
So what is your aim? Is it to alert the general population to the pitfalls, or is it to try and get something done at a higher level?
Well, both. We certainly alert the population and we alert the government, politicians and regulators to pitfalls. For example, a major part of our campaign at the moment is the fact that whereas consumers represent the largest constituency in the United Kingdom of voters, if you can believe it, there is no minister to represent their interests or shadow minister. So they have no ministerial representation, in other words, at the level where it's needed, although they are the biggest population of voters. So the Campaign for Fair Finance is working to get something done about that. If you actually look through the list of government ministers and opposition ministers, you can't even find the word consumer.
I suppose people think that somebody like Which is somebody you would cooperate with.
Which is a journalistic endeavor, and they're going to report on things, but they aren't going to go out and bring the two parties together. They aren't going to work with Lambeth Palace and explain that there always has been and always will be a need for payday lenders. They shouldn't be rendered extinct, in other words. But we will then sit down with the payday lenders and explain that the abuses that they have created needed to and have got to stop. So that's pretty much what the campaign does. The campaign is not for profit, obviously, but I separately founded a commercial undertaking called FairMoney.com, which is a fair loans comparison website where we bend over backwards to treat customers fairly and especially to help people who have financial problems and can't get loans elsewhere.
So give us the name of that again.
FairMoney.com, all one word, FairMoney.com. And we built that together with our partners, the huge Equinity company, which is run by a couple of visionaries, Guy Wakely and Matt Porter, who are geniuses in artificial intelligence. And so we have algorithms, as they say, and other digital big data capabilities that can really help people by analyzing general data and their data and trying to find the best and the fairest loans for them.
So we seem to be in a society where everybody has got to have what they want immediately, and the idea of saving up for something seems a little odd nowadays. I mean, that's the way I was brought up, and it seemed to work.
It does work, and you've stated it very well, absolutely, and that's one of the things the campaign stresses. Another thing that we stress, Simon, is we're a bit old-fashioned. You can get a loan on the Internet in, what, a minute or two?
Right.
But we actually caution people to be old-fashioned and ring up the company. If you don't go into a high-street shop and speak to a lender and you're just on the Internet, call up the company. You want to see if they answer the ready phone, for starters.
Yeah.
And then you want to see how you feel about the person on the other line. God forbid you're late by a week on your payment. You want to know there's somebody there that you can relate to. If you don't like the people on the phone, go find somewhere else to borrow money if you're borrowing money.
Yes, because presumably there's plenty of people out there ready to lend you money.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, you just have to see what the advertising looks like with all the puppets and the slogans and the rest. But you're absolutely right. Save up for what you need. Absolutely do not borrow if you don't need to.
Now, was it you or was it something I read when something you were saying about the thing about borrowing from yourself?
Well, use your own funds. In other words, at this time of year, and particularly this January, following the effects of the financial crisis finally starting to work their way through to the consumers, a lot of people are having a tough time. Use your own money. Break into your piggy bank. Use your Christmas fund if you've got one. Do all of that before you think about borrowing money to deal with the bills that come from Christmas. Don't incur more debt to pay off your other debts if you can help it.
Yes, because, I mean, any money we've got in savings is not making huge interest at the moment.
That's for sure. sure. And again, it's because I think one reason of many is there's no ministerial voice. Nobody's shouting out that you've got to pay fair interest.
Yes, I suppose we assume, because we hear a lot about the Public Accounts Committee, that there is somebody that is thinking about accounts, but of course that's nothing to do with the consumer.
Absolutely. There are many people, many politicians, many committees, many groups all talking about this, and they're all talking at a very high macroeconomic level, which nobody really cares about. We say in the campaign what people care about is their children's bed, their bed, the rest of their home, their children's school, their place of work, and maybe they get a holiday with sunshine every couple of years, and all the rest is window dressing. But what's not happening right now is the government and the opposition and all the politicians seem not to be working too hard to make us feel safe in those areas. Yes, defense, yes, health issues, very, very important, but consumers and their money are simply not being addressed enough, we feel.
Okay, so what are you proposing? What are you campaigning for such a department to be set up?
We're campaigning for a government and a shadow opposition minister to be appointed to deal with consumer protection, especially in the financial arena, yes. And that is the first. So as for the rest of the goals of the campaign, I would take up too much of your valuable time on your show, but we have a lot of issues. There are a lot of things to address like that.
Now, if we go through to your website, fairmoney.com.
There's fairmoney.com, and there's also campaignforfairfinance.org.
Campaignforfairfinance.org. Now, do you have sort of tips, suggestions, helps as to how you can go about getting the best or the fairest deals?
Yes, we do. The fairmoney.com site is full of tips and suggestions and approved lenders for deals that we believe are fair and are properly chosen for customers. And the fairmoney.com website under the blog also has more of my tips for what to do about those Christmas bills, where we are getting an unprecedented number of requests for interviews and advice. It seems to be really tough for people this year.
Yes, I think it's the fact that suddenly things looked as if they're all getting better, and so people quickly spend, and then the sales come, you think, oh, I must get one of those. And the power of advertising to change our thinking is quite frightening.
Again, you put your finger right on it, Simon. It's the power of advertising and also the power of journalism. And newspaper space and television and radio space is precious and scarce. So journalists cannot always cover a story from every single aspect. So, yes, things are getting better on certain large economic levels, but what we at the campaign keep stressing is that what is not particularly getting better, in fact, what is getting worse is the after effects of the financial crisis that are only just now working through. It's a tsunami that's just coming. In other words, if you remember, 5 years ago, banks stopped lending money. Finance companies stopped lending money to people, and banks wouldn't give them. If the banks weren't lending to people, they weren't going to give it to the finance companies to lend to people. So people who never would have borrowed from hugely expensive Payday and other lenders went out and got themselves into horrendous debt, some of which they'll never be able to pay off. And all of that is now just working through. Mortgage rates are about to be reset, as you read every day.
Yep.
Interest rates may go up at some point. So the worst is actually, in some respects, yet to come for the poor bloke at the end of the line, the end user, the consumer. And we don't feel that that's been brought out enough, and that's why we need a minister, and that's why that minister will bring more government attention.
Some of these payday loans, the rates are such that people are facing astronomical debts for a small sum they borrowed. Presumably there's a legality in it. What could you do? Go bankrupt and then wipe it out and then start again, or what?
You can say, God bless Justin Welby, because given his business background before he became Archbishop, which allowed him to sit on various government committees, he was able to help, along with many others, to persuade the regulators, the Competition and Markets Authority and the Financial Conduct Authority, to actually put a cap on those rates. Now, some of those payday rates, as you say, Simon, were well over 5,000% annual percentage rate, APR.
Wow.
And they have now been brought down to 1,200, etc. Dramatic reduction thanks to those regulators and all the people who worked with them to get that done. And that's a very welcome thing. They're still very expensive and should only be used as a last resort. But to answer your question, yes, when they were charging 5,000%, waving puppets in your face, it was totally legal.
The difficulty is that we get so used to using a card, whether it's a debit card or a credit card, and you tend to use a credit card often. In theory, you should never need to pay any interest on them at all.
If you pay it off every month, absolutely, and that's what we tell people to do with their Christmas bills. We like to say, don't let those red bills make you blue. When those bills come in and hit the doormat with a thud, for goodness sake, don't stick them behind the clock on the mantelpiece or give them to your partner and say, remind me about these next month. Come up with a plan, and we suggest that plan starts with the credit cards and the overdrafts and the other things that charge you interest. Pay those off first.
Right.
And if you pay most credit cards the same month, there's no interest.
No, I mean, you could even get a system where the bank will automatically pay it for you, so you don't even have to try to remember not to forget, if you know what I mean.
Totally.
But that does mean that you mustn't spend more than you're going to get back in wages.
Well, that is a very good idea, and yet all of us at Christmas time do tend to go a little wild, and we advise people to firstly think about all the pleasure, all the presents, the evenings out, the meals, the booze, the friends, the people you made happy. Buy that extra expense, so don't feel too guilty about it. Number two, don't panic. Don't put those bills behind the clock.
And face up to it.
Come up with a plan, Simon, so that you can pay them off over the next 2 to 3 to 6 months. You don't want to be paying those bills when Santa comes around next year.
Yeah, of course. The key bit we've got is to go to fairmoney.com and check that one out, or to go to your campaignforfairfinance.org and check that out, and then respond sensibly.
If I may, I'd only add one thing. If you think you're in shtuk, if you really, really do think that you've gone too far, there are organizations such as Step Change, Money Advice Service, The Money Charity is a wonderful organization, and one of our absolute favorites is the Archbishop's new Church Credit Champions Network, which the Archbishop likes to say that he has the biggest branch network in the UK, 15,000 parishes. The Church Credit Champions Network, which helps people who are in problems and directs them to their local credit unions where they can borrow much less expensively, is being rolled out across the country. So all of those organizations have their own websites, and if you feel you're in a spot of bother and need some help, they will be very glad to hear from you.
Brilliant.
And if borrowing is the answer, they'll send you to a credit union in the first instance.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for being prepared to talk to us. Okay. Well,
Thank you so much, Simon.
No, thank you indeed.
Happy New Year.
And to
Okay.
you, yeah. God bless.
Bye.
Bye-bye.